If you told me 6 months ago that I'd walk away from the force, I would have laughed in your face. I've been a cop for 12 years, and yeah, the job's tough, but I loved it, or at least I used to. It wasn't a shootout or a high-speed chase that broke me. It was a call, a routine welfare check that turned into something I still can't explain. My name's Ethan Myers. I worked the night shift in a quiet town where the biggest crimes were drunk driving and the occasional break-in. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I had a good partner, Charlie, who'd been on the force for as long as I had. We got along because we didn't take the job too seriously. Protect and serve, sure, but most of the time, we were just trying to keep people from doing anything too stupid. The night it happened started like any other. Charlie called in sick, so I was riding solo. It was a slow shift, the kind where you count the hours until sunrise. Around 2 a.m., dispatch came through with a welfare check. Unit 23. Neighbor reports loud noises and screaming from 217 Mulberry Street. No answer at the door. Homeowner's name is Henry Walters, 64. I groaned. Welfare checks were usually nothing, a drunk yelling at the TV or someone forgetting to take their meds. Still, protocol was protocol. I acknowledged the call and drove out to the address. Mulberry Street was in the older part of town, where the houses were packed close together with small, overgrown yards. Most of the streetlights were out, so my cruiser's headlights cut through the darkness like a knife. I pulled up in front of 217, a shabby, two-story house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The place looked deserted, but the lights were on inside. I radioed dispatch to confirm I'd arrived and stepped out of the car. The air was heavy, the kind of humidity that clings to your skin. I made my way up the creaking steps and knocked on the door. Mr. Walters? Police department? You okay in there? No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I listened carefully and thought I heard a faint rustling inside, but it could have been anything, an old house settling. Maybe a cat. I tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. That's when the unease started to creep in. Mr. Walters, I'm coming in to check on you, I announced, pushing the door open. The smell hit me immediately, a damp, earthy stench, like mold and wet dirt. The living room was small and cluttered, with old furniture and stacks of newspapers piled against the walls. The TV was on, static crackling on the screen. I called out again, but the only response was the low hum of the static. My hand hovered near my holster as I moved deeper into the house. Something wasn't right. The kitchen was worse. Plates with dried food were stacked in the sink, and a dark stain spread across the floor near the fridge. It looked like spilled coffee, but the metallic smell made me think otherwise. I knelt down and touched it. Sticky. Blood. I straightened up, every muscle in my body tense. I should have called for backup right then, but I told myself I could handle it. It wasn't the first time I'd walked into a mess like this. I checked the back door. Locked. No sign of a break-in. The unease gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside and climbed the stairs, the old wood groaning under my boots. The hallway was narrow and dark, lined with closed doors. Mr. Walters? I called out, my voice echoing. Nothing. The first door on the left led to a bedroom. The bed was unmade, and clothes were scattered on the floor. The second door opened to a bathroom. Empty. That left one door at the end of the hall. As I approached, I heard it, a soft rhythmic tapping. My mouth went dry. I drew my weapon and steadied my breathing. The door was slightly ajar, and the tapping grew louder as I pushed it open. The room was empty, but the tapping continued. It was coming from the closet. I forced myself to move forward, one slow step at a time. The closet door was cracked open, and I could see a thin sliver of darkness inside. Mr. Walters, if you're in there, show me your hands, I ordered. No response. I grabbed the doorknob, my fingers slick with sweat, and yanked it open. Nothing. The closet was empty, just a few old coats and a stack of shoeboxes. The tapping had stopped. I exhaled shakily, lowering my weapon. Maybe the stress was getting to me. That's when I noticed the shoeboxes. They weren't stacked. They were arranged in a circle on the floor like some kind of ritual. In the center of the circle was a Polaroid photograph. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was a picture of me standing in the doorway of the house just minutes earlier. My stomach dropped. My head snapped up, scanning the room. No one else was there. I backed out of the closet, my heart racing. I needed to get out of this house. As I turned to leave, I heard it again. The tapping, but this time, it wasn't coming from the closet. It was coming from the walls. It started softly, like fingernails brushing against wood, and then grew louder, more frantic. It surrounded me, echoing through the house. I bolted down the stairs, the sound chasing me. When I reached the front door, it slammed shut in my face. The tapping stopped. The house fell silent. I yanked the door open and ran to my cruiser, fumbling for my radio. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the button. Dispatch, this is Unit 23, requesting immediate backup at 217 Mulberry Street. Possible homicide scene. Over. Static. I tried again. Dispatch, do you copy? Over. Nothing. The cruiser wouldn't start. I turned the key over and over, but the engine just sputtered. My eyes darted to the house. The lights were off now, and the front door stood wide open. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw movement. A shadow darting between the trees behind me. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. The static on my radio crackled, and a voice broke through. Officer Myers, you should left. The voice wasn't dispatch. It was mine. I slammed the car door open and took off down the street on foot. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road, where I flagged down a passing car. The driver called the station, and within minutes, backup arrived. But when we returned to 217 Mulberry Street, the house was empty. No blood, no photos, no sign of Henry Walters. Just a quiet, abandoned house. I handed in my badge the next day. Sometimes, late at night, I hear tapping on my apartment walls. I tell myself it's just the pipes, but deep down, I know better. Something followed me out of that house, and it's waiting. The hardest thing to deal with as a cop isn't the violence, the long hours, or even the constant threat to your life. It's the things you can't explain, the cases that don't make sense, the ones you can't file away neatly at the end of your shift. For me, it was the night I responded to the call on Red Line Road. I've been on the force for 9 years now. Small-town police work isn't glamorous, but I like it. My name's Jake Miller. I'm 32, divorced, no kids. People in my town know me as reliable, the guy who shows up when you need him. I'm not saying I'm a hero, just someone who believes in doing the job right. But that night, something happens that I'll never forget. Something that makes me question everything I thought I knew about the world. It started with a 911 call around 11:30 p.m. Dispatch played it back for me as I pulled up my cruiser to the station. The voice on the line was shaky, barely above a whisper. There's someone in my house. I think they're in the basement. The dispatcher tried to get more information, but the line went dead. No name, no address, just a location ping from the cell tower. It led to a house on Red Line Road, a narrow stretch of cracked pavement that winds through the woods on the edge of town. Locals always joked that nothing good happened out there. I wasn't laughing when I got the call. The house was old, probably built in the 52nds, with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. It had been abandoned for years. I parked my cruiser by the curb and grabbed my flashlight. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. My radio crackled. Officer Miller, are you on scene? Yeah, I said. Looks deserted. I'm going to check it out. I approached the house, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking in the breeze. I called out, "This is Officer Miller. Is anyone here?" No answer. I stepped inside, my boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The air smelled stale, like mildew and dust, but there was something else, a faint metallic tang I couldn't place. The living room was empty, just a faded couch and a broken lamp. My flashlight swept across the walls, and I saw scratches near the floor, like something had been dragged. The uneasy feeling started then, a low hum in the back of my mind. Still, I pressed on. Hello? If someone's here, I'm here to help. A noise came from the back of the house, a faint thud. I turned toward it, my hand instinctively going to my holster. The sound led me to the kitchen. It was just as empty as the living room, but the basement door was open, revealing a set of rickety wooden stairs descending into darkness. Police, I called again. I'm coming down. If you're hurt, let me know. No response. I descended slowly, the stairs groaning under my weight. The basement smelled worse than the rest of the house, damp, rotten. My flashlight flickered, the beam catching cobwebs in a dirt floor. Then I saw it, a chair in the middle of the room surrounded by a circle of candles, all burned down to stubs. The metallic smell was stronger here, almost overwhelming. That's when I noticed the writing on the walls. It wasn't writing, exactly. It was scratched into the concrete, jagged letters that didn't form words. Just symbols repeated over and over again. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room, and then I heard it. A whisper, faint, like someone standing just behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam darting across the room. Nothing. My radio crackled to life, startling me. Jake, you good? It was dispatch. Yeah, I said, trying to steady my voice. The house looks abandoned. Just some weird stuff in the basement. I'm heading back up. I turned to leave. But as I did, my flashlight caught something on the floor, a trail of dark stains leading to the far corner. I followed it, dread curling in my stomach. The stains stopped at a patch of loose dirt. My breath caught. It wasn't just dirt. It was a shallow grave. I crouched down, shining my light over it. The earth had been disturbed recently, the edges jagged. My gut told me to call it in, wait for backup, but something made me dig. Maybe it was the voice on the 911 call. Maybe it was the need to know. I used my hands, clawing at the dirt. It wasn't long before I hit something solid, a piece of fabric. I pulled harder, and the ground gave way, revealing a bundle wrapped in a filthy sheet. My stomach turned as I realized what it was. A body. Before I could react, the whispering started again. Louder this time, urgent. It filled the room, echoing off the walls. I stood up, my heart hammering in my chest. Who's there? I shouted. The whispering stopped. And then I heard it, footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming down the stairs. My flashlight flickered again, the beam barely holding as I pointed it toward the staircase. Stop right there, I yelled, drawing my weapon. The footsteps continued, heavy and deliberate. Last warning, my voice cracked. The flashlight died. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to turn it back on. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, and I could feel someone or something standing there watching me. The whispering started again, right in my ear this time. I bolted. I ran up the stairs, through the house, and out into the night, not stopping until I was back in my cruiser. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I thought I saw someone standing on the porch, but when I looked again, they were gone. I radioed in what I found, and a team was sent to investigate. When they arrived, the basement was empty. No chair, no candles, no grave. Just an old, abandoned house. The body I found? Gone. They ruled it a false alarm, said I was probably tired, imagining things, but I know what I saw. And every so often, when I'm driving through town late at night, I swear I see the symbols again. Scratched into walls, carved into trees, always in places they shouldn't be. And sometimes, when it's really quiet, I hear the whispering. I don't know what I found in that house, but I know one thing. It's still out there, waiting. They tell you about the dangers of being a cop, the violence, the long hours, the stress. But no one ever warns you about the moments that stay with you long after you've handed in your badge. My name is Mark Grayson, and I was with the police force for 15 years. I wasn't perfect, but I was good at what I did. That all changed the night I took the call about Emily Carter. Emily was 15, a straight-A student, quiet, polite, every parent's dream. She disappeared one Friday night after walking home from a friend's house. Her parents were frantic. The search started immediately, and as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Then, 3 months later, we got a tip. A neighbor spotted someone who looked like Emily in an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. It was a cold December night, the kind where the wind cuts through you no matter how many layers you're wearing. I was on patrol when the call came in. I knew the house. Everyone in town did. The Prescott house had been empty for years, left to rot after a fire gutted the second floor. Kids dared each other to spend the night there, but no one ever stayed long. I radioed in and told dispatch I'd check it out. I figured it'd be nothing, just another wild goose chase. But deep down, I hoped. Cases like Emily's stay with you. They claw at the back of your mind, whispering that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. When I pulled up to the house, my headlights illuminated the cracked windows and sagging porch. The place looked like it was barely holding itself together. I killed the engine and stepped out, the crunch of gravel under my boots the only sound. My breath fogged in the icy air as I shone my flashlight on the front door, which hung slightly ajar. "Emily, this is Officer Grayson," I called out, my voice echoing. "If you're in there, I'm here to help." No answer. I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The smell hit me immediately, a mix of mildew, rotting wood, and something else I couldn't place. Something metallic. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a living room frozen in time, furniture covered in dust, a broken clock on the mantel, and graffiti scrawled on the walls. I moved carefully, calling Emily's name again. Still nothing. The house was silent, but not in a comforting way. It was the kind of silence that presses down on you, making every creak of the floorboards sound like a gunshot. The tip had been specific. The neighbor saw a girl matching Emily's description on the second floor. I made my way up the stairs, the wooden steps sagging under my weight. The fire had done a number on this place. Half the railing was missing, and the walls were blackened with soot. "Emily?" I called out, my voice softer now. The upstairs hallway stretched out in front of me, lined with doors that seemed to loom larger in the dim light. I tried the first door on the left. It opened to a bedroom, empty except for a rusted bed frame. The next door led to a bathroom, the porcelain sink cracked and stained. Then I heard a faint sound, like a whisper. My heart jumped. "Emily, is that you?" The whispering stopped. I swung the flashlight toward the end of the hall. One door remained slightly ajar. The sound came again, quieter this time, almost like breathing. I approached the door, my hand resting on the holster of my gun. "Emily, it's okay. I'm here to take you home." I nudged the door open with my foot. The room was empty, no furniture, no girl, just peeling wallpaper and a window that had been boarded up. My flashlight caught something on the floor, scratch marks, deep grooves etched into the wood. They led to the corner of the room, where a small trapdoor sat flush with the floor. I froze. The whispering started again, louder now, coming from beneath the trapdoor. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to call for backup, but something stronger, curiosity, duty, maybe stupidity, kept me rooted in place. I crouched down and gripped the edge of the trapdoor, my fingers trembling. With a deep breath, I pulled it open. The smell hit me like a punch to the gut, decay and damp earth. My flashlight illuminated a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The whispering stopped. "Emily?" I called, my voice cracking. "If you're down there, say something." Nothing. I hesitated for what felt like an eternity before descending the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight, the darkness swallowing me whole. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the house itself was pressing down on me. The basement was small, the walls lined with crumbling brick. My flashlight swept across the room, revealing a table, a chair, and a camera. An old camcorder sat on the table, its red recording light blinking. My stomach churned as I stepped closer. The camera was pointed at the chair, which was bolted to the floor. Ropes hung loosely from the armrests, stained dark with what I could only assume was blood. My hands shook as I reached for the camera. Before I could touch it, the whispering returned, louder than ever, filling the room. It wasn't coming from a single direction. It was everywhere, surrounding me. My flashlight flickered, and the temperature plummeted. "Who's there?" I shouted, spinning around. The whispering grew frantic, overlapping voices speaking words I couldn't understand. My flashlight went out completely, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in. I fumbled for my radio, but all I got was static. The whispering was deafening now, a cacophony of voices screaming in unison, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence. I stood there, my heart pounding, until I heard it. A single, soft laugh. I bolted up the stairs, not daring to look back. I ran out of the house and didn't stop until I was back in my cruiser. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of there, my tires kicking up gravel. When I got back to the station, I tried to explain what had happened, but I could see it in their faces. They didn't believe me. They sent another unit to the house. But when they got there, the trapdoor was gone. No basement, no camera, nothing. Just an empty, abandoned house. Emily Carter was never found. I resigned a week later. I tell myself it was the stress, the long hours, but the truth is, I can't sleep. Every night, I hear the whispering, and sometimes when I close my eyes, I see her, Emily, smiling, waiting. I've worked as a dispatcher for the county sheriff's office for over a decade. I'm not on the front lines like the deputies, but I'm the one who keeps them safe, coordinates backup, and takes the calls that set everything in motion. It's a job that requires a cool head and steady nerves. But there's one night, one call that still haunts me. It started around midnight on a Wednesday. Quiet shifts are rare, but that night had been slow, just the usual traffic stops and a couple of noise complaints. I was flipping through an old binder of procedures when the 911 line lit up. 911. What's your emergency? I said, automatically switching into work mode. For a moment, all I heard was static, like the line was struggling to connect. Then came a voice, low and trembling, barely audible over the crackle. There's someone outside. They've been watching me for hours. Please, you have to hurry. My stomach tightened. Calls like these always did. The fear in her voice was real, raw. Ma'am, what's your name? Can you tell me your address? She hesitated, then whispered, Emily. I'm at 123 Oak Hollow Road. That caught my attention. Oak Hollow Road had been abandoned for years, ever since the state rerouted the highway. The few houses that hadn't been torn down were left to rot. Emily, are you sure about the address? Yes, she said, her voice rising with panic. I'm hiding in the upstairs bedroom. I can hear him moving around outside. Please, he's going to get in. I typed the address into the system and dispatched Deputy Caleb Mercer. Caleb was a solid guy, mid-30 seconds, former Marine, unflappable. Emily, I said, I've got an officer on the way. Stay where you are and keep quiet. Can you tell me what the person looks like? She started to answer, but her words cut off suddenly, replaced by a strange, wet choking sound. Emily? Emily, are you there? No response. I repeated her name, louder this time, but the line went dead. I felt a knot of unease settle in my chest. Something about the call felt off. I double-checked the dispatch log. Caleb was about 10 minutes out. I radioed him. Caleb, be advised the caller mentioned someone outside the house. She sounded very distressed, but the call was cut off. Copy that? He replied. I'll check it out. I leaned back in my chair, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. The minutes dragged by, each one heavier than the last. Finally, Caleb's voice crackled over the radio. Dispatch, I'm at 123 Oak Hollow. House looks abandoned. No signs of activity. Did you check the perimeter? Just finished. Windows and doors are boarded up tight. No footprints in the dirt either. Are you sure this is the right address? I'm sure, I said, though doubt was creeping in. I'll take a look inside, Caleb said. Be careful. I waited, heart pounding, as the silence stretched. Caleb's radio was on, but all I could hear was static and faint rustling. Caleb, what's your status? No answer. Caleb, respond. Still nothing. I was about to call for backup when his voice came through, shaky and low. Dispatch, I don't know what the hell is going on here. What do you mean? The house. It's empty, but it doesn't feel right. The air is heavy, like it's pressing down on me. And the walls upstairs, he broke off, breathing hard. What about the walls? They're covered in writing, words scratched into the plaster, over and over again. What do they say? I don't know. It's gibberish, but it feels like it's watching me. The line went dead again. Panic clawed at me as I tried to raise him. Seconds felt like hours before his voice came back, strained and frantic. Dispatch, I'm not alone. I heard footsteps upstairs, but there's no one here. The writing, it's fresh, like someone's still scratching it in. I'm getting out of here. Get back to your cruiser, I said, my voice shaking. I'm trying, he said. But a loud crash cut him off, followed by a guttural scream that made my blood run cold. Caleb? Caleb? Silence. I dispatched backup units and stayed on the line, my heart hammering in my chest. When the other deputies arrived, they found Caleb's cruiser parked by the road, engine running, lights still flashing. The house, however, was empty. No writing on the walls, no sign of struggle, and no Caleb. The official report said he must have abandoned his post, but I knew better. Caleb was a rock, the kind of guy who didn't rattle easily. He wouldn't just leave. I couldn't let it go. A week after the incident, I drove out to Oak Hollow Road myself. The house stood there, silent and lifeless, its windows gaping like empty eyes. I didn't go inside, but as I stood there, staring at the peeling paint and sagging roof, I heard it. And then Caleb's voice, whispering just behind me, "Dispatch, I can't get out." I turned, but there was no one there. I quit my job a month later. The house was demolished soon after, but I still hear Caleb's voice sometimes. In my dreams, on the edge of static-filled radio channels, and in the silence of long, lonely nights. I don't know what happened to him, but I do know this. Not every call can be answered. Not every call should.